Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Kalayim, Pedig Ches, Halacha Beis, and Halacha Gimel. We are learning today Daf Ayin Beis. We left off on Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top in the beginning of the Gemara. We began the topic of Kilei Behema. We're going to start today with a Braisa that's going to teach us more about the prohibition of mating Kalayim, exactly where and what is the prohibition, and we're going to have the opinion of Isi ben Akavia, who holds that one cannot derive benefit from a crossbred animal. We don't paskin that way, right? That means according to Isi ben Akavia, just as an example, no one is allowed to benefit from a mule. That's an offspring from a horse and a donkey. We're going to have one line of Agadata. We're going to speak about the unique mule of David HaMelech. And then the sugya that we will have is similar to a topic that we had in Babli Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik, and that is the question whether there is an isur min haTorah to lead 2 different animals by the means of sound alone. Right? That was the Rabbi Yochanan who says in the Babli, you're not allowed to do it, and you get Malchus. Why do you get Malchus? Because Akimas Sifasov have a Maisa. So it's a lav sheyesh by Maisa. Here in the Yerushalmi, we're going to have the opinion will be Rabbi Chami bar Ukva, like Rabbi Yochanan in the Babli. He's going to hold that Yel Yubi Chayev Malchus, and we're going to have various challenges from different areas throughout Shas on Rabbi Chami bar Ukva, but he will stand his ground. The Gemara is going to explain a bit the machlokas that we had in the Mishnah between the Chachamim and Avmeir, whether a person who is sitting in the wagon that's hitched to 2 different types of animals, whether that person is Chayiv Malchus or not. In other words, whether the animals attached to the wagon, whether they feel the vibrations of someone sitting there, and that motivates them to move, then the sitter, the Yoshev B'Kadin, will be Chayiv Malchus, or even if they are aware of him, but that type of awareness is not enough for it to be considered as if the sitter in the wagon motivated the animals to move, and he won't be Chayiv Malchus. That's more or less going to be all of the sugya in Halacha Beis. And Daf Ayin Beis Amud Beis, we're going to begin the new Mishnah, Halacha Gimel. And Halacha Gimel is going to deal with additional cases involving animals of diverse kinds that are pulling a wagon. And we're going to have Shitas Rabbi Yehuda, Ubelashon Habavli, that ein chosheshin lezera ha'av, as we will see. In other words, when you have a crossbreed, are you allowed to put together, mate 2 crossbreeds? We already spoke it out in the first Mishnah. If their mothers are of the same type, since ein chosheshin lezera ha'av, yes, it will be permitted, and we'll see how far we can get. Finally, we're going to have a machlokes tanoim and Rabbein and the Chachamim regarding if you have, let's say, an ox or 2 oxen tied to a wagon, and you have a horse that's tied separately to the wagon from the side. In Halacha Beis, Mamish, the last line that we learned yesterday, right, when the Mishnah concluded that Hashlishis, Shehi Kshura Liditsui Ehen Asura, that is where, like I mentioned, you have 2 animals, let's say 2 horses tied to a wagon, and then you tied another animal in front of the 2 horses. There, in this case, since the 3rd wheel is helping in the pulling of the wagon, of course, you'll be Chayiv Malchus. It's usher. The case that we'll have at the end of today's year, again, you have 2 oxen or 2 horses or 2 animals or 1, whatever. You have an animal pulling a wagon. And then the wagon, on the side of the wagon, there is a rope that's connected to another animal. That's a lot less direct. Here, there's a machlokes tanoim, and the Gemara will explain. We'll see how far we can get. What is the underlying machlokes? We'll leave it at that, and we're going to begin Chedran Daf Ayin Beis Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top, beginning with the Gemara. The Mishnah began telling us that behema in behema, etc., etc. So we're going to focus now on the prohibition of mating animals, that type of kilei behema, the isur of laharbia, not to be marbia. So we limit the isur. Says the Braisa, we already spoke it out. Or in the case of Eitzel Zacharim, you would think that one is not allowed to put 2 diverse species of animals in the same pen. So if you have first females, then there'll be a prey of one type. then you won't be allowed to bring males of the other type. Or if you have males of one type already independent, you will not be allowed to bring females of the other type, because by bringing them together, you are upping the chances for them to end up mating with each other. Says the Braisa, no, that's not prohibited. Why? Quoting the pasuk in Parshas Kedoshim, Talmud, thou shalt not mate a mixture of animals. Says the Braisa, that means ein at asur ella mila harbia, the act of mating, to physically take the male organ and to insert it into the female, that is what's asur midoraisa. Avol maimed at, you are allowed to put zacharim eitz on the keves, and the keves says zacharim, and that will be permitted. Why? Explains the Braisa, because when you put animals in the same pen of different species, you didn't do anything. No. When is the mixture happening? The mixture happens when the male inserts, let's say, his sperm into the female. And if the animals mated on their own, even though you put them in the same pen, you didn't do it, the animals did it. Well, if he died, who made them?
A stumbling block.
What was that?
It's not a stumbling block.
It's amazing, huh? And I want you to know it's funny, because this won't be the first time we're going to have in this daf about the das of an animal. In other words, the animal has enough das that if he does it, so to say, on his own, he's not chayv in mitzvahs. He's not obligated in the mitzvahs. And I want to add one little detail, that even though the truth is, we're saying good, we learned this in the Rambam, that to be chayiv malchus is only, these farmers, these animal breeders, when they actually insert the male and the female, midrabanan, if you mount the male on the female, you'll be chayiv. Midrabanan. That's already very close. But just putting them in the same pen is not usher, and you're allowed to do it. Okay. Now we have the unique opinion, which we don't pass in, like the opinion of Isi ben Akabi. I know I'm interrupting the class, but it's a little bit negeya. So Rabbi Mendel, here's the challenge. They put the boards up in front of 1660, which will become the door. You can't get in there. There is a key in the glass door. I left it in my mailbox, unless I already gave it to you. Why am I saying that? Because I cannot see the chat, and no one will be able to daven shachris. No one can get in there. So now I don't know how to take off the board, and the board cannot be broken because that board will become the door. Okay, I apologize to everyone back in the Gemara. Let's go. Isi ben Akabi oime. Right? We have Akabi memahalal. Isi ben Akabi says, look at it, look. Also, you cannot ride on top of a mule. In other words, you can't have hana'ah from a crossbreed. Not the way we learned. Our Mishnah explicitly said that the only thing you can do is to mate them. If you mate them, you chayiv malchus. If you lead them, you chayiv malchus. But not to have hana'ah from a crossbreed, we don't pass, and there's an issue. He holds it's a problem. And how does he get to that? From a kal v'chomer. This is a gewaldige kal v'chomer. Ma in the begodim. When it comes to kilei begodim, there sha'at mutar lilbosh al zeh. Clearly, you are allowed to wear two garments, one of wool, one of linen, one on top of the other biblically. No, it's the only thing that's prohibited is if they are mixed in the same garment. So where I am allowed to wear one on top of the other, nevertheless, the Torah says, at asur b'ta'aruftan. If you mingle them in the same garment, that's asur midoraisa. When it comes to the mixture of animals, we are comparing leading something with two animals like wearing a garment one on top of the other. You understand? In other words, even though they're not mixed together, when I am having two animals schlepped together, being led together, being prodded together, they're not mixed together. Yet by animals, we see the Torah is more machmir. Even though they're not mixed together, you can't put one with the other. So it's more chomer than begodim. And just like by begodim, you're not allowed to wear it. So loy kolchein that that you are prohibited to ride on a mule, which means you may not have hana'ah from a crossbreed. The example Isi is giving, Isi ben Akabi, is from a pirda, from a mule, but obviously this goes to any type of crossbreed. Now the Gemara is going to challenge it by showing in history that we know there were people that we look up to that they rode a mule. The first challenge is v'haksiv And the Gemara is quoting a pasuk that we have in Shmuel, what we call Shmuel Beis. And there we're speaking about how Avshalom's sons, they took revenge by killing Amnon, with that horrible story that happened with Amnon and Tamar. And they killed him based on their father's instructions. And after they killed him, it says, I'm quoting the pasuk, Vayikumu kol bnei hamelech, all of Avshalom's sons got up, Vayirkevu ish al pirdoi vayonusu. They ran away riding a mule. And the presumption is that the children of Avshalom were not sinning. And they rode on a mule. They had a scripture, a pasuk in Nach. So answers the Gemara, what's the raya? Guys, remember this line. Ein lemeidim min hamalchus. Ein lemeidim min hamalchus means that when people of a royal family behave in a certain way, it does not mean it's kosher. Adarabba, the Marafullah writes, Shaholchim b'shrirus liban, that b'nei malchus, they have this entitlement that they can do whatever they want. Afilu shaloi kadas. So b'nei malchus, the children of Avshalom, they did something. What proof is it? Now,
they get an exemption.
What was that?
They get an exemption on halachot.
No, the God does not give them an exemption. They give themselves an exemption. So the verse is recording what they did, but it doesn't mean that what they did is kosher. Hold on. You can say that on Bnei Avshalom. You know, it's ironic. Bnei Avshalom, they just killed Amnon. Now, I know that Amnon raped Tamar, but to kill them out of a Beis Din, in other words, you see that they're doing things that are questionable. But here comes that little I got it there. Now we're quoting a pasuk in Malachim, and over there, David HaMelech gave his son Shlomo his mule to ride upon, and the raya from that story is not that Shlomo was riding on the mule, because for that we already said Ein lemeidim min hamalchus, and the Gemara is not going with an attitude that Shlomo was such a tzaddik that if he did it, it's okay. What we are going is with the presumption which stands that David HaMelech is such a tzaddik. Why is that? Because it says in Malachim Beis, Vaya'as hayashar be'einei Hashem. So this verse implies that David HaMelech was a tzaddik. So when it says that he gave his son Shlomo his mule to ride upon, that implies that David previously was riding on that mule. Let me read the pasuk. Why would David HaMelech have a mule if a mule is asur b'hana? So now you can't say ein lemeidim min hamalchus from David HaMelech lemeidim min hamalchus. Answers the Gemara. You're speaking about David HaMelech's mule. That was a unique mule. David HaMelech's mule was not a crossbred breed. What was it? That during the 6 days of creation, whether this was Bein Hashmashes, whether it wasn't Bein Hashmashes, that the Eibishter created a special mule for David HaMelech. And it wasn't from a horse and a donkey. It wasn't a crossbreed. So it's such a mule you can have enough from. Yeah, kid. You don't know what to do with that. Neither do I. I'm thinking what to give a drush on Shabbos from this.
No, I know. I understand all we're learning here. But why a king would give, or the Eberster is going to give such a terrible gift as a mule? It's a stubborn animal. It's not very functioning very well. Like, what a mule! Like,
it's not a good form of transportation.
To what we're learning, 100%. But a mule.
I would say like this, Yakir. I'm suggesting that just like we do have befedish in Hasidus, that a chamoid represents the chumrius of a person, and the writing on the chamoid represents a yid who elevated that means he did a skafia and a sapcha on his chamoid. Perhaps I'm going with what you're saying, that a mule is worse than a donkey. The mule represents the lowest of the lowest, the darkest of the dark. And Dafke, David HaMelech, he was the one that through his avodah of his skafia and his sapcha, he even was able to elevate a mule.
Beautiful.
Rabbi, why did the sons of what's his name, Avshalom, get away on a mule? Mule is not a fast It's not a fast ride.
I'm going to give now that I have a one track mind. So I'm going to give you the same answer. That maybe when people do an act that comes from they killed someone. They killed a rapist. I know that. But whatever, I'm saying maybe when it comes to these stories, what the midos that are brought out from the person are mule type of midos. Maybe. Okay, weiter. Now, here comes, this is the big topic of today. I know that we're learning Rambam. Every day between Min Chamayrev, I try to share Psavort of the Rebbe and the Rambam. We just learned this a short while back about you causing an animal to move only by sound and the consequences that you will be held to because of it. And let's dive right into it. So we are beginning now with the prohibition of manig, kile behema. That means if you have two different species of animals, let's say that are hitched onto a wagon, just as an example, you're not allowed to lead, you're not allowed to prod, you're not allowed to pull, you're not allowed to cause those animals to go, because that's included in the prohibition of leisacharish b'shor b'chamor yaktov. So if you do an action by schlepping it, by hitting it, by pulling it, by moving it, of course it'll be chayiv malchus. You did a lav sheyesh by mice. Question is, what happens if you shouted at the animals, you called out to the animals, your voice motivated them to move, whether that's considered an action for which you're chayiv malchus or not. So here says the Gemara, Rabbi Chami bar Ukva, in the name of Rabbi Yossi bar Chanina Amar, that hamanig b'kelayim, not only is it prohibited, but loike yochayev malchus. This is the shita that we have in the Babli, like we mentioned, Bava Metzia Daf Tzadik, that Rabbi Yochanan, Resh Lakish, Rabbi Yochanan says chayev malchus, and he says because akimas sefasav hava maisa. These words we don't have in our sugya. The Gemara right now is going to begin by trying to prove the guys that Nami Bar Chama is an Amayra. So we begin by writing, I have a raya from a Braisa, but Tony K. What's the Braisa? That Hinhiga is, we explained this yesterday, leading. I know the word leading, you have in mind leading from the front. By animals, you lead it from the back and you pull it from the front, just to get that terminology. Hinhiga. Remember, Ashgacha Pratis, after the stroke, the Rebbe davened all the way in Maidev, the end of the shul, over there on the porch. So you have this concept of, so hiniga or himshicha, that's an action. Or the Braisa says, you called out, that's clear. So listen to the Braisa. Now the Braisa is not, what is the Braisa talking about? Okay. The Braisa, I'm sorry, is not speaking about Kilayim. I take that back. You're laughing, Kevin. The Braisa is speaking about the following. That's exactly, we learned this in the Rambam regarding the Shoyah. When a person borrows an animal, they have the highest level of liability, right? Which is the Chayiv even Ba'oinus. I know you have a few Hatadim. If when you borrowed it, the owner was also borrowed to you, it makes a machmas malacha, exceptions. The rule is you're chayiv. From when are you chayiv? So one approach is you're chayiv from when you begin to use it. No, this Braisa holds you're chayiv from when you took possession of it. Now, how do you define taking possession? So of course, if you physically hinhiga himshicha, you took possession. The Braisa is saying that even if you didn't physically take possession of it, but you caused it to move because you called out to it. You called out to the animal followed you. And that action makes it considered as if you took hold of it. That's the word. So we're making a comparison. So that's considered the kinyan. So then making two different species move out, you also acquired it. You made it, and therefore you should be chayiv. Now I know that
anyone can call out an animal.
Anyone.
But only the person who's borrowing it can pull it out.
In other words, Kevan, you're the owner. Let's say you're the owner, I'm the borrower. If someone else takes it from you, they're called a ganef. We're not talking about that. We're talking about I'm a borrower, and if something happened, I'm chayiv, even ba'oinus. A beam fell on the head of the animal, Once I took it, I'm chayiv. When did I take it? So the Braisa is saying a chiddush, even if I never took it. I just called to it, and it came to me. Now it's already on the borrowing began. Okay. There's so much. I remember this in the Bible because there's so many ways of showing how one is not connected to the other. Particularly when it comes to the issue of lav she'ein by ma'isa. In other words, those who would argue with Chami bar Ukva, they're not saying that you are allowed to call out to an animal when two animals are hitched to something together. No, you're not allowed to do it. But if you did it, you're not chayiv malchus because it's a lav she'ein by ma'isa. So you're going to say, if it's a ma'isa for a kinyan, I can tell you right away that by kinyanim, you have this whole topic. I know that normally you have to make a kinyan, but really it's gemiras das. Really it's gemiras das. The proof is even after you make a kinyan, you can normally retract after they did it. And you have certain areas in halacha where you don't have to make a kinyan. I know it's very few, but because of the concept of gemiras das. But anyways, let's go by. Now we're going to push back. Let's push back against Rabbi Bar Chama. Shmuel. Now we have a brisa that we learned from Shmuel. So we're quoting Shmuel, but it's not an Amayra. We're quoting a brisa. The brisa here, Hilchas Shabbos. Just to know the general rule. The general rule is that just like I am bound to my 2,000 amas boundary concerning Shabbos, out of which I may not walk, normally my possessions, and my animals are included, they are bound by my tchum. It's late. I just want to say the general. There are times that I have my tchum, and my animal, for some reason, has the animal's tchum. The case of the Brais of Shmuel was that I am at the boundary of my tchum Shabbos. The animal has its own tchum Shabbos. I want to get the animal to walk into my tchum. I want the animal to come to me. And what did I do? Says the Brais, I called out to it. Now, I was not allowed to do it. But since it's a non-action, the Braisa is implying it's only us and midrabanan. You're not going to be chayiv chatas. Here, let's read it inside. If the animal was standing outside of the tchum, and v'kara la uvas achras, and the owner called out to his animal, causing the animal to come to him, causing the animal to leave the animal's tchum. So if he would have done it biyadayim, there would have been a problem. That's a great picture. Hareza Potter, he's exempt. From here you see that sound is not halachically considered an action. Enough for you to be chayiv chatos. Now, I just want to make it clear that our Yerushalmi used the Braisa of the Shoyel as a base for Rab Chami bar Ukva. So just to clarify this entire sugya, that we're going to have many kashas. I know I'm wording it the kashas on Rami bar Ukva, Rab Chami bar Ukva. But you can word it, it's a contradiction between two braises. Same thing. So answers the Gemara, it's not a contradiction. Why is that? Because Kama means over there, Taken, over there, in Hilchos Shabbos. When it comes to the laws of Tchum. L'daito hima haleches. Again, l'daito. This is fascinating. How much das does an animal have? In our Gemara today, an animal has plenty of das. And I want to say like this. There's a difference whether the animal is in the city or outside the city. Listen to these words. When the animal is in a city, let's say there is a lender and a borrower. It's all in the city. The animal doesn't feel free to run away. It can't. So when one causes it to move, they are the ones that did it. In the case of this braisa of an animal being outside the tchum, normally that would mean the animal is in an open area. The animal is in an uninhabited area. The animal feels that it can easily run away. And some animals run away. The fact that the animal chose not to run away, but it came to the calling of its owner, we call that an action that was done by the animal. So even if we're going to say, let me use the words in the Bible, that Akim Asfas of Hava Maisa, why is the owner not chayiv chatos? Because he didn't move the animal. The animal chose to come to his calling.
So he has freedom of choice, and he has his own techum.
I love
the
it.
Animal.
Very good, Kevin. I'm happy you're picking it up. That's what we're learning today. We're learning today that the animal feels a difference, whether it's outside the city. Let me say it like this. The behemoth and me, when I'm outside, when I'm in nature, we went this week to visit a vineyard, there's a certain feeling of freedom. Not, God forbid, min mitzvahs. Adarab, I feel God more. But there's a certain freedom you feel out there. And therefore, whatever you choose to do out there is more your choice. When you are amongst people, what you do is less your choice. It's more peer pressure. Now, a human being always has the power to go against it. Forget that animal doesn't have freedom of choice. So listen to this logic. That over there, in other words, when we're speaking about an animal being outside of Tchum, because of it, the animal's awareness that it can easily run away. It doesn't have to go to the owner. So when it chooses to go to the schooling, the animal is the one that did it. Why should the owner be chayiv? But over here, whether it's the Braisa's case of a borrowed animal, whether it's the case of Rami Bar Chama, of you leading an animal by using your voice, listen to these words. Al karcha hi mahalechas. In other words, the animal doesn't feel like it's free. It's either stuck with the lender or going to go to the borrower, but it doesn't have its own freedom. So who is the mover? Who is the shaker? The person who called out to it. Now, according to this answer, I just want to let you know, it comes out that Rami Bar Ukva, that when Rami Bar Ukva says that if you're mani kalayim bekoil yoloika, according to this answer, that's only in the city. If you're manning an animal, mani kalayim, but the animals are outside the city, you won't be chayiv malchus. Because the animal felt it didn't have to listen to you. And if it did, it was the one that did it. Right, this is fascinating. The Gabbai is not here, we're lucky. He would have been he would have dug his heels in and we would have wasted 10 minutes. Not wasted, we would have gone back and forth. But that's what the Gemara is saying. Next contradiction. The Gemara, we learned in another Braisa. Here we're learning the din that if a person owns an Evet Kanani, right, or a Shifcha Kananis, and if God forbid they hit their Evet, and they remove their eye or their tooth, and really, like we know, it's not only Shein Ba'ayin, it's all of the Chavdalad Rashi Evarim. So the din is that as a penalty to the owner, the Evet goes out free. That is if they hit them with their hands. If it was Biyodayim. Here says the Braisa, what happens if Tipach Keneged Einoi V'Simoy? If someone hit the wall right near the Eved's eye, and listen to what happened here is that the sound shocked the Eved, and the shock is what blinded him. Or similarly, Keneged Oznoi, that he made a noise right near the ear of the Eved, and because of the sound and the shock, the Eved became deaf. Question is, will that Eved go out to freedom? The Braisa says, Loi Yatza Lecherus. Why Lo Yatza Lecherus? L'chayre the pshat is because a sound is not so significant. You didn't do it. You didn't. You like you can say it's like grama. It was a cause, but you didn't do it direct. Why not? Why? What's the difference? L'chayre, you are who say that if you're mani kalayim b'kol, you're loika. So if you made the Eved's eye blind, he should go out lecherus. The next Gavaldik answer says the Gemara Daf Ayin Beis Amid Beis. I'll tell you the big difference. Amar Rabbi Loza Rabbi Yosi, and he said it in front of his tata l'chayre Kumei Rabbi Yosi. Shani, one case is different than the other, and he doesn't even say. Look at these people. How is one case different than the other? Look inside the top Pnei Moshe. This is what we would have had on the Bible. Over there, Hassam says the Pnei Moshe Shaharei Hoya Yochel Eved Livrayach Actually Yavis. The Eved could have run away prior to him being frightened. We're giving some responsibility to the victim. We're not blaming the victim, but I want you to know that deep down, when someone was victimized, they should ask themselves, what in the future, what is my part? We're not saying they're at fault, but what could you have done to protect yourself better? Everyone thinks that way. Why did the Eved stay so close to the master where the master was able to crouch up on him and to frighten him and to make such a sound? So there was some involvement of the Eved.
But a slave has no choice. He has
he has a choice. He's a human being. If an animal has choice, an Eved for sure has choice. Now, again, read inside the words. He could have ran away prior to him being already in that position where he can be frightened. Since he did not run away, he availed himself to such a shock. Who got him? Doesn't mean we're not blaming him, but we're putting some responsibility on him. Masha'enk, and an animal doesn't have enough das to understand that. Now, if that's the case, then what would happen if the Eved was tied up? If the Eved was unable to run away, based on this logic, then the master would have to set him out free. And take the Lachashu Kain, responds Rabbi Loza ben Rabbi Yossi, because he found a Baraisa that says that if Tafas boy, if the owner grabbed the Eved, he grabbed him and he shouted in his ear. In other words, the Eved was unable to run away. So then Taka had a Chayav. Chayav means, I just want to know, this Baraisa is not speaking about Eved. I think about it. This is speaking about two people. One man grabs another free man and he shouts in his ear. So the question there is, are they chayiv to pay for compensation? And the rule of damage is Gerama bin Yizakin pater b'dei other. Chayiv b'dei Shammai pater b'dei other. Same idea. It's one connected to the other. So if he chopped him in his hands and he shouted in his ear and he became deaf, he's chayiv to pay for the damages. Why? Because it's considered direct. So why is he exempt if he didn't grab him? Not because sound is not significant. Because the person should not have availed himself to be that close. You didn't protect yourself. Beautiful. Okay.
It's like if you're in a shooting range and somebody, you forget your hearing protection, and somebody shoots right next to you, you're responsible yourself.
That's for sure. But even if you're not in the shooting range, you have to have a certain sense of awareness that people around you can do things that will be very unpleasant for you. And that's part of my responsibility that God gave me to protect myself. Now, the Mishnah, we had a machlokes Chachamim and Avmeir. If you have someone leading, let's say, two animals, an ox and a horse, and it's hitched to a wagon. Someone is sitting in the wagon. Is the person who's sitting in the wagon chayiv malchus? Machlokes. What's the machlokes? Right? Rav Meir says the guy sitting in the wagon is not chayiv malchus, meaning the Chachamim hold he's chayiv malchus. Why is he chayiv malchus? He's not holding the reins, just the guy sitting in the wagon. So the Gemara explains why. Hayoshev v'karan Rabbanan amim, the Rabbanan hold mishkolhu. Mishkolhu means that since a person sitting in the wagon weighs the wagon, I would even say, like he says over here, that he causes some vibrations to happen. The animal feels someone is sitting in the wagon. The animal's knowledge that someone is sitting in the wagon is what motivates the animal to move. So his sitting there is part of the problem. He's leading it. He's prodding it by sitting there. Rav Meir is not arguing with the Metzias. Animals they feel that someone is sitting in the wagon. But that type of vibration, halachically, is not considered a contribution for the movement of the animal. It's a machlokes whether that's enough of a contribution or not. Rav Meir Omar Eino Mishkol. Gewaltig. Now, the Mishnah, and this is important, the Mishnah said, the end, and the Gemara, it's so beautiful the way we masaded the Gemara, that when you have two animals, and then you added the third animal, but in halacha base, guys, two animals, a wagon, and then you tied a third animal, not to the wagon, but to the two animals. So the third animal is there. The two animals could have schlepped the wagon by themselves. They could have done it by themselves, but now that you have a third animal, the third animal is adding. He's alleviating the burden. That's why in our Mishnah, everyone will hold that the adding of the third animal is forbidden. Usher. And if someone led such a carriage, very mamash, I don't know how you got that picture, but in this picture, it looks like horses and a little baby horse. But if it would be two horses and something else, or if that's a mule, then you got a problem. Oh. So now, the Gemara is showing us that throughout history, different societies began to add more animals hitched to the same wagon. And that's a proof that the added animals, they add. Menla, you in the shul?
I'm right next door. We have tables and chairs. We're ready for Shabbos.
Oh, thank you, Menla. Yishkoyach Gadol. Okay, thank you. So now, and maybe if you can put it on the solo chat that we're davening in. Thank you. So like this, look at the Gemara. Originally, means from when God made the world and people would hitch animals to a wagon, they would hitch two. Where do we find that? All of this is Agadah, because it says regarding Yosef, that Paroi, right after Yosef became a Miketz, after Yosef was appointed to be the Tzotnas Paneach, to be the second viceroy. So it says Paroi had him ride on the Mirkeves HaMishnah. Now, the word Mishnah, Pshat, is that Paroi had, let's say, Air Force One. Then you have Air Force Two. Mishnah means the chariot that belongs to the viceroy. That is the Pshat. The drasha that the Gemara is making, Mishnah means doubled, second, like Air Force Two, right? What are they called, Keva? Not the Air Force, the car. The card of the president, the wagon.
Limousine.
Huh?
The limo?
No. There's a name for it. The beast. They have a name here for the United States. It doesn't matter. So Merkeves HaMishnah means in the wagon Mishnah that schlepped by two, the chariot of the two horses. That's the drush. That was how it used to be. Comes along Paroi, a later Paroi, V'asa Shalosh. Now, whether later or not, really, a machloikis and Rashi in the beginning, Rashi brings two opinions. But the Parei Hashgacha Pratis, we are learning this Friday, Erev Shabbos, Parshas B'Shala. So when it says in the Shiras Hayam that we just learned Chitas, wow, what a day of Chitas in Chumash. But how do you know that Parei had three animals leading? Because it says Visholishim al Kuloi. Now again, the Pshat Sholishim Rashi says we just learned this means officers. But the drasha is Visholishim that every chariot had three animals, had three horses. Omid Malchus Arisha. Malchus Arisha is wrong. Well, you know what they did? Abba means that when they would go out with chariots, they would have four animals leading the chariot. Four. All of this is araya that the more, even though two was enough, but the third is adding something. Or the third one is joining the work of the other two. That's why you're going to be, it's asur. Now let's continue. Let's go as quick as much as we can go. Says the Holy Mishnah, Halachi Gimel. Now we're going to a different type of case. Here we're not learning about adding a third animal together with the two. Here we have, let's say there are two animals. That's the case of the Mishnah. Let's say two oxen. Two oxen are leading a wagon. On the side of the wagon, or even behind the wagon, someone attached the rope, and that rope has a horse on it. Is that a problem? Says the Mishnah. You're not allowed to tie your horse, not on the sides of the wagon, not even not even behind the wagon. Why? We'll see in the Gemara. It's already very far removed. Guys, I want you to know that does that animal help? Even the one behind. If the two oxen in the front stop walking and this horse goes mishuga and he starts moving, he'll move the wagon here or there. There is some, but it's very indirect. Now the Mishnah gives another nuance. There's an animal called a livdikis. A livdikis resembles a camel. I don't know what this is called in English, but it's really, halachically, it's a large donkey. So one might have thought that since the livdikis looks like a camel, it's not the kilei behema with camels. No. Another bit says the Mishnah, livdikis is not from the camel family. It's from the donkey family. And therefore, kilei behema. Now, the Rabbi Yehuda Omer, we spoke it out in brief in the previous Mishnah, but this Mishnah is very elaborate. The words in the Bavli on this Mishnah is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda that ein chosheshin lezera ha'av. And let me explain to you what I mean. Let me say it first by heart. I know we spoke about it, but let's repeat it. If you have two mules, even if both mules' mother is a horse, both mules' fathers is a donkey, one might have said these two mules cannot be hitched together. Why? Because maybe we look at every mule, every part of the mule is a mixture of a horse and a donkey. And the other mule, every part of it is a mixture of a horse and a donkey. And therefore, how can you hitch them both together when the donkey part of one is joining the horse part of the other? That is what one might have thought. Rabbi Yehuda is machadish something. And here are the words. Ein chosheshin lezera ha'av. Whenever you have a crossbreed, we do not look at the seed of the father. All is what counts as the mother. So if you have two mules, if they share the same mother, whether the mother is a donkey, whether the mother is a horse, they are allowed to be hitched together. However, that we learned already. If one has a mother donkey and one has a mother horse, then you can't. Let's read it inside. Rabbi Yehuda Kol hanodim min asus, and this goes on the female. Anything whose mother is a female horse, Even if both of them have fathers that are chamayim, that means each one is a crossbreed, and you might have thought again that every part of this animal is considered a mixture. And if we would have viewed it that way, then you can never hitch these two animals together because each one has a tzad sus, which cannot be united with the tzad chamor. But we could. Similarly, if both mules have a mother that's a donkey, even though both fathers are horses, that means they're both crossbreeds. They are allowed. What is aser? If one has a mother that's a horse and the other is neilad and menachamar, the other's mother is a donkey, then asurim zamzem. Okay, let's.
So it goes with the mom.
In other words, not only does it go with the mom, but we don't consider an animal. Let's say the mom is a horse. We don't say that there is a mixture of a donkey in it. We do say it's a crossbred. We don't consider it a bona fide horse. Make no mistake. But we don't say that every part of this animal has two parts in it. We don't look at it that way. We look only at the mother. And if two animals share the same mother type, even though each animal is a crossbreed, we are okay to uniting these two animals together. Now, let's go back to the first case in the Mishnah. We're going to get back to this. Don't worry, Kaden. Tushitas Rabbi Yehuda. First case in the Mishnah is, unlike halacha beis, you have two oxen. That's the case of the Mishnah. The two oxen are hitched in front of the wagon. Someone attached a rope to the side of the wagon or even to the back of the wagon, and on that they put a horse. Says the Mishnah, you're not allowed to do it. So first of all, you should know that even though our Mishnah did not quote an argument, the Gemara begins by quoting a Braisa that Rav Meir holds, and there's a machlekes in Girsa, which is extremely important. Let's read it inside. Says the Gemara, I want you to know that even though our Mishnah did not quote any other dissenting opinion, there is one. Either the Girsa is poiter, or the Pnei Moshe quotes the Girsa Rav Meir Matir. There's a big difference, guys. Remember from Hilchos Shabbos? Rav Meir poiter means that you're not allowed to do it midarabanan, which would imply that our Mishnah holds you may not do it midayrais. It's us in midayrais. If Rav Meir says that mutar means even midarabanan there's no prohibition. L'cha'oida the Chachamim hold it's only us in midarabanan. In other words, we're not going to make. It's called the afushe machloikis. We don't make the machloikis from one minakotz ala kotz. So this machlekes and girsa is these two opinions in the version. That's a great picture. Here we have, even though the horse is schlepping the barrel, if you can erase the barrel, anyway, it doesn't matter. Rav Meir poiter. Now says the Braisa, we are continuing the Braisa, that even Rav Meir will agree that im hoyim misayoi, that if the horse is assisting in the ox, even though it's tied to the side, if it's assisting, if it's actually schlepping, Bain Mila, whether when it's taking the wagon up, so it's pulling it. Bain Biyarida or assisting means that when the wagon is going down, like with a truck, it's hard to stop it. That would make more sense that the animal is tied in the back. If an animal is tied to the back of the wagon, the rope to the wagon, how does it pull it? It doesn't. But when you're going downhill and you have to stop the wagon, that's where the horse is assisting. So it's assisting here or there. Everyone is minded that it's us. But Rav Meir says if it's going on a straight road, it's okay. Says the Gemara, why would the Chachamim argue? What's the issue? Machlokes Amoraim, and we're going to learn this, and then we'll pick it up, God willing, next year. Amar Rabbi Yochanan, why is it prohibited if it's only tied? It's tied to the wagon. It's not tied to the two other animals. Each one picks up where the other one gets lazy. I know it's very, very, very indirect. But still, the oxen feels that there's a horse somewhere here, and it can make a little bit less effort, and the horse can add a little bit of effort somehow, even if it pushes it with its nose. The horse it helps a little bit. That's why it's awesome. Rav says no. Rav says, listen to the words of Rav, because they are carrying a rope together. The wagon is only carried by the oxen. We're not speaking about uphill or downhill. When it's going straight, the oxen is in the front. You don't have a third animal attached to the front the way we had in the previous Mishnah. You have a third animal tied to a rope on the side. But listen to my words, guys. You have two oxen. What are they taking? They're taking a wagon. If I have on the side of the wagon another rope attached to the horse, Make believe the horse is not there for a moment. They don't have to pull the horse. The horse is a living being. The horse is taking itself. But who's schlepping the rope?
But the weight is negligible.
Wait, let me just finish explaining this. You have 2 oxen pulling a wagon, and now you have a rope attached to the wagon. Forget about for a moment the fact that the rope is attached to a horse. Forget about the horse. The oxen are not dragging the horse. The horse is walking on its own. But what's making the rope move? The 2 oxen. The horse that's attached to the rope is also making the rope move. So you're right. The horse is not attached to the wagon. There aren't 2 different types schlepping the wagon, but you have 2 different animals schlepping the rope. The rope is insignificant. Actually, the rope is not here to be schlepped. The rope is here to allow the horse to schlep. Doesn't matter. Since there is a rope, that's the machloikis. The Rameir holds that if you go with the girsa mutter, because the rope is not a thing that's being carried. The Chachamim will de facto the rope. What's carrying the rope? Oxen and a horse. That's why you got a problem. All
right, we said the guy who's sitting on a horse on a donkey, he doesn't count because his weight is negligible. Now we're saying the weight of his rope.
No. We're not saying his weight is negligible. We want to know whether he's causing the animals to move. So since there's a vibration in the wagon, the animals in the front feel there's someone there.
The vibration is due to his weight.
Yeah, and the weight, in other words, the weight is another way of prodding the animal. Animals of yoke, they know that when there's something there, they got to move. They feel you there, they move, so you cause them to move. Guys, this is fascinating.